Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this this video cast. I'm Frank Norris, and this is my good friend Stan Johnson. And
Hi.
Morning, Stan.
Morning.
Yeah, here we are. Whenever, and here we are on Frank and Stan chats number 8. These started during when the lockdown commenced. I think Stan and I thought there might be some value in people listening to us chatting.
Well, I don't think we thought that, Frank. We thought we just carry on chatting and people
and see whether anybody finds it interesting. I think we're both surprised by how many people are actually viewing this, and we do have some regular fans now. So we'll carry on while we'll have those regular fans. So thank you to everybody that has encouraged us to carry on with this. But before I get onto the ground rules, just to before we lose our watchers. We're going to be chatting about probably one of the biggest announcements in education in many years, and is what the government's calling the catch-up premium or the catch-up plan program, whatever. So we're going to chat about that today. But before we do, we've got some ground rules. I'm going to find it very hard this week, but we're not going to slag anybody off. We're going to try and be positive. We appreciate that this is very, very difficult times. Stan and I have never led an institution or a program during such difficult times. So we are deeply respectful, I think, of those that are trying to do their best. And also, I think we're also conscious of, I've heard your word, Stan, being used quite a lot recently.
Kind. No, we've been kind.
Yes. And actually, it's a bit like when you buy a new car, you see all the time. I've heard that word kind all the time.
Yeah.
So,
perhaps if we could get it into society generally, that might be more helpful than just us being kind.
Yeah, and perhaps we need to live out this during our chat as well. Okay, so what's caught your eye this week, Stan?
Well, apart from, we'll talk later about the announcement this morning. I think the one thing that's caught my eye at the moment is how tribal we've become as a country. It seems almost irrelevant as to what the issue is, but the people divide along exactly the same lines as they have been for the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm not sure as a society how we're going to sort that out. It's a real worry for me. When you see people defending statues of George Eliot, because obviously the mill on the floss was a real issue, it worries me that you've got men standing there saying we're defending this statue, when actually there's nobody attacking the statue. There's no thoughts of attacking the statue, but hey, we'll see if we can cause trouble with somebody. Yeah. It just seems we're in a difficult situation.
I think there is around. There are some leaders though who can bring groups together to find a narrative that allows them to. People to find a bit of give in it, enough to connect to it. It doesn't have to be that you believe everything that leader says, but you can see the humanity, you could see a sense of civic duty and a sense of wanting to include everybody. And I think a lot of people then sort of, they connect to that.
I think we're looking for, we use kindness all the time. We're looking for hope as well, I think we need somebody to provide the nation with a bit of hope that not just that things will get better with the virus, but we can solve some of our deep cultural issues that we're struggling with at the moment.
Yeah. Well, what's caught my eye, before we get on to our big discussion, yesterday I was looking on Twitter, very keen tweeter, if that's up to the word. And I saw an 8 or 9-year-old child at school playing a keyboard piece, and I thought it was done well, but it wasn't done in rhythm. So I couldn't quite work out what the song was. So I asked what the song was, and it came back with an artist that I'd never heard of, but it said including a guy called Charlie Puth, who is an American singer-songwriter who I do know. And so what's happened is the challenge has gone out that I will play guitar over the keyboard piece that this child has played, and everybody thinks that I'm not going to be able to do it. So what's caught my eye is how little faith people have in my guitar playing. But how also
Frank, it's not just your guitar playing, mate.
but actually it's encouraged me to really give it a go. And I wish I had a little recording studio here, because I'd like to put sort of a drum beat to it as well, but I haven't. But anyway, we'll see. Anyway, let's chat about the big announcement that's going to be made today. It feels like it's been made already, but I think there's going to, whether there's been a formal announcement or not, but in effect about £1 billion going into recording catch-up. I don't know, what are your views on it, Stan?
Well, I've know it's a mixture of some tutoring run by a national tutoring organisation that they're going to put together, and money given to schools for them to decide how best to support vulnerable pupils, I think, because I think it's linked to free school meals. I think the numbers are linked to that from what I've read, which I'm a bit annoyed about, really, because it suggests that they're the only children who need that kind of support. But my view would be leave the tutoring to the year 10s and 11s to give them the catch-up that they need, and leave the money in primary to head teachers to choose how to do it best.
I think... Sorry, I lost you a bit there, Stan. What did you say?
Sorry, I'm not sure what we're actually catching up. I think we're re-establishing school, and I think that's culturally that's what needs to be done. We re-establish the routines, the order, and everything else of school. Of course, when it's safe to do so, but that's the primary job, I think, of primary schools, to get that up and running. And in terms of learning that's been missed, I just think that's fixable. I really do.
Yeah, I think I think lockdown was it March the 21st or something like that, and the following week or that weekend I wrote a paper about tutoring, and felt as though the best place to actually sort of try and get some mileage on it was to take it to the Northern Powerhouse Partnership group that I'm on their education board. And we started to talk to Tutor Trust, and there are a number of others. Amazing, I think it's called the Coronavirus Tutoring Institute, which is basically run by 2 or 3 Oxford University graduates who basically set up a website and asked students, undergraduates, do you want to get involved? Because we can connect you. There's a staggering... I think that they're a staggering organisation. Probably nobody's ever really heard of them, but actually that's an attempt by a small group who had an idea and ran with it. And so we tried to, through the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, we had various meetings with various groups that were being formed, including some of the big national tutor providers. And it became clear that the DFE wanted to lob this issue to the Education Endowment Foundation, and that didn't include us. So what we were concerned about was, in effect, the market. There is a market for tutors, and what we wanted to do was have something a bit cleaner, one that was perhaps that actually built on local relationships that already exist. So Henry Morrison, the CEO of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, said there are going to be loads of graduates out of work. It's going to impact, and this was in March. He was making that prediction, and he was right. So he said we've got to come up with a plan that would allow us to use those graduates in local schools to support local children. So that's how we morphed the paper then into a graduate tutor mentor. And then there was a big debate about, is it tutoring, is it mentoring? I think that that probably reflects the education system as it is. There are those senior leaders driven by solely or largely by, it's about getting the results. And there are those heads as well, and senior leaders who are driven very much initially by the well-being of the child, the approach you take. And what we were looking at was something that started off with the mentoring aspect of it, which was around the well-being, the getting back into the routines. Obviously you can't carry on doing that for days and days. I mean, because you've got to teach the kids something. But actually, the emphasis was on that, and then it shifted to tutoring. And I think that allowed us to develop with Sheffield Hallam University, which is what we've done, a program which allows them to start online because we're all in lockdown, but can morph into a face-to-face program. And it has an element, initially a strong element of mentoring that shifts into tutoring when that is right for that child. And also the other thing, just before I finish, is the thing I like about it is not we never set it up by saying to the head teachers who are involved in the pilot, you've got to do it. We're basically saying to them, this is what we think, with your help, this is what we think the program's going to look like. But whatever the program is at your school is the program at your school. And so, in effect, it allows the heads now to sort of cherry pick off a series of programs, some that are run by national tutoring organisations and others more locally based. Also, the students get accredited for this work. So actually what we're looking at now is to make sure that today the 4 groups that are part of the EEF consortium, that alone is not given as this is the route. You cherry pick off those 4, because we actually think there's a better program or a program that can be adapted and become more face-to-face and can be scaled up through the universities, which would address some of the graduate employment issues that some of those young people are going to be facing. So I feel really sort of frustrated because I've got no control over this. And it probably wasn't just my idea. I suspect the Tutor Trust were thinking of this, and I've spoken to other groups that have, actually through the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, who have been amazing through this. We've got something which I think is really good, but we've got to find a way in which we let the world know about it. And it isn't just, head teachers this needs to be visible to head teachers, because I think it is more akin to what they would want and what they will like.
Is that focused mainly at secondary?
This one is. There's a similar one being developed in Bradford, which is around year 10 maths. So, so this one is year 10, but we're only in the pilot, and whatever. To be honest, it was just a case of choose a year group.
I think
it would work in primary as well.
Yeah, but I think that kind of support is really good at around about your 9, 10, 11. That there's somebody who's been through it recently who's giving some additional, because not only do you get support then in the subject knowledge, you get support in the preparation, in the commitment, someone to talk to about when it's difficult, and for pupils, students, it's people they can relate to probably much easier than adults. So
for me, I think it also has the ability, because these are people who potentially could be teachers. In effect, a school would be looking at a pool of people, some of whom may not like it, some people just might not fit in, but there could be some real nuggets out there, and people think, oh wow, that's amazing. The idea that somebody could start this program in August or September, and suddenly they're teaching the following September. I think that's something the university program can deliver, which would be very difficult for the other programs to deliver in that way. Because the university, Sheffield Hallam, is one of the main universities for teacher training. So the connectivity here is clear. There's forward for a graduate, who's looking at unemployment, now.
I think I can't remember where I read it, but I read recently that in times of high unemployment, which is what we're potentially looking at now, the people become teachers. Teaching shortages disappear as people see it as, I don't know, an easy option, but certainly a safe option to move into. So, yes. Being as for the last 4 or 5 years, and before that, to my knowledge, it's been really difficult to recruit people to teacher training. that might change. Not sure for the right reasons. That's my only concern.
Yeah, yes. I mean, in a way, there's something here around control, isn't there? That we were talking before we started filming about the danger of you want to show leadership as a government, but you can. I think you can show leadership, but actually give flex and responsibility to those people delivering the service. You know.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real risk. I think the free school meals fiasco is another example of wanting control. You know, it just felt, you know, the civic duty was to actually, you know, Marcus Rashford should not have had to have done what he's done in order to do that. I mean, really, you know, leadership is around care and responsibility for all citizens, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this when we talked about leadership. That humility, that's saying, actually, we didn't get this right, so we're going to try it a different way.
Yeah.
Or, as would be really good for the teaching profession, we genuinely trust our teachers and our head teachers to put this package together. Yeah. So we're giving them the money and saying, get on with it.
I do think if the government had said, I mean, we're onto a broader issue now, but if they'd actually said, look, and every teacher understands this, you know, we cannot have children sitting at home doing nothing. You know, can we come together and do our utmost? And actually, you know, I do understand the 2 meters social distancing. I do get that. But actually, there was a disconnect between government pronouncements and hearing the voice of a head teacher, or it felt as though there was. You know,
yeah.
Every head teacher will tell you, you know, I 2 meter distance down those corridors, Stan. It's some Victorian.
Well, yeah. The other thing, which is not mentioned now, it seems to be we're trying to find somebody to blame. The real reason schools can't open is the 2 meter rule, yeah. And the 2 meter rule is what makes it safe, and that has to remain. Then you can't have everybody back in schools. It doesn't. There's no way around that. Yeah. And if they then move to 1 meter, even then, you won't be able to have 35 children in a normal primary classroom.
I think that's the reason why the blended learning is, you know, it's leading us into next week's discussions also on this. But the blended learning with some online work at home, and you know, and actually, if we could allow, the issue for me is more around can we get broadband access in? Because if we can get laptops into school, we might be able to find a way in which, if children are on 1 week off the next, where there's a sharing of laptops, you know, so that it's more around connectivity rather than the hardware. If we're actually on a mixed economy of week in or 2 weeks in, 2 weeks off, you know.
Yeah, and I seem to remember prior to the last election, you know, the concept of free Wi-Fi for everyone was laughed at.
It was laughed at.
The cost compared to the kind of money we're throwing about now is minimal.
Yeah, I mean, Northern Powerhouse Partnership, they were talking about, Henry Morrison was talking about, we must see broadband as the utility.
Yeah.
You know, we cannot have it whereby we have unemployed people unable to make applications, because in order to do so, they've got to go down to the library, which isn't open all the time, and actually log on to make an application online. You know, we cannot have this, you know, because actually it's counterproductive. So I do like the idea, as Labour proposed, of in effect the broadband being like a utility. We do need that. The connectivity is more important than the laptop. No point having a laptop if you've got
no. There's not.
Isn't it?
There's not. And it's not that difficult to do.
No.
It's not like 20 years ago where it would have been, you know. I remember when I was working in Lancashire that the Computers for Schools initiative eventually put broadband into all schools, including rural schools, and did it in such a way that the cables were sufficient enough to support the local community should anybody then choose to build on that.
Yeah.
So the infrastructure's probably there now in most parts of the country. I bet you there'll be some rural areas that don't have.
There will, but even so, we did some work with Lancaster University, and there is a broadband provider on the Isle of Man that's not known to any of us, but they have technology which allows you to sort of basically beam it in through.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at doing some work in Morecambe and beam it into Blackpool, and then just beam it over to.
Yeah, well, some of the Lancashire schools had it by microwave beam, as long as you had a line of sight.
Yes.
And because I know when we were trying to do one of the outdoor ed centres, we were looking at somewhere in the Lake District, whether there was a line of sight from the Windermere to one of these places.
Yeah.
Technology way beyond my understanding.
Yeah.
But it's possible, and if the will and the commitment's there to say, actually we do need it as a utility available to anybody at a cost that is not substantial, then with a minimum of 50, 100 megabytes per second, we should be able to do that.
I know. Anyway, next week.
Sorry, it's
that's 20 odd minutes or so. Next week, we're in a way. It does flow. This isn't planned. This is not scripted. But actually, it's funny that we've got to a position now where next week we have Graham Newell, who is from Iris Connect, a sort of techie solution for helping teachers to improve their practice. And so Graham's going to be talking to us. I've done some work with Graham before, and for me, it has so much potential. But it builds quite nicely on what we've been chatting about today. So next week it's Graham Newell, and if anybody watching this, you can find Stan and me on Twitter. And Stan, I think you're down as, are you Athena?
Athena Limited.
Yeah, but you can find me, Frank W. Norris, on Twitter. We'd be really keen to hear what you've got to say about these, and please be kind. I think we've been reasonably kind today, honest but kind. So anyway, hopefully we'll see you all next week, and let's see where we are next week.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's great to chat to you, Stan, and
thank you,
everybody. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.